It started quietly in Victoria, British Columbia, a city known more for its gardens and calm harbours than for international drama. But on a chilly morning, the world's attention shifted northward. The shockwaves from this small coastal city were immediate and far-reaching, rippling across the continent and igniting headlines from Anchorage to Atlanta. Premier David Eby, in a move no one saw coming, stunned North America by announcing steep tolls on all U.S. commercial trucks using the Alaska Highway, a vital artery for trade and supplies. This wasn't just a new tax, it was a bold, unmistakable message. Canada would no longer absorb U.S. economic pressure without fighting back. The era of quiet compliance was over. For decades, the Alaska Highway had been a symbol of seamless trade and cross-border cooperation, a lifeline connecting remote communities and economies. Overnight, that lifeline became a flashpoint, a source of tension and uncertainty. The certainty that goods would flow north was gone, replaced by confusion, anger, and a sense of betrayal among truckers and logistics workers on both sides of the border. American trucking companies scrambled to make sense of the new reality. How much would the tolls be? When would they start? Was this even legal? Dispatchers worked overtime, drivers worried about their livelihoods, and business owners feared for their bottom lines. In Washington, the news landed like a thunderclap. Officials realized this was a direct challenge to President Trump's aggressive tariff strategy and a test of American resolve. The move forced the U.S. to confront the real consequences of its protectionist policies as economists debated the fallout and politicians scrambled for a response. Suddenly, a remote highway, once overlooked by most, became the center of a spiraling trade war, with every mile now a battleground for economic influence. Premier Eby and Prime Minister Mark Carney were betting that economic pain in Alaska, empty shelves, closed shops and rising prices, would pressure the U.S. to reconsider its hardline stance. The Alaska Highway, once a symbol of unity and open borders, was now a choke point, a bottleneck where frustration and national pride collided. Toll booths in northern British Columbia became more than revenue collectors. They were symbols of a new, defiant Canada, standing up for its interests on the world stage. The world's longest undefended border suddenly felt less friendly, as security tightened and suspicion replaced trust. The message was clear. Canada was ready to use its geography as leverage, turning its vast northern expanse into a powerful bargaining chip. The era of quiet, polite disagreement was over. In its place, a new chapter had begun, one defined by bold moves, high stakes, and a continent holding its breath. The Alaska Highway is more than pavement. It's a monument to U.S. Canada cooperation. Built in 1942 during World War II, it was a lifeline, connecting Alaska to the rest of the U.S. through Canadian wilderness. For over 80 years, it symbolized partnership, economic prosperity, and open borders. Communities on both sides thrived on its steady flow of goods and travelers. Now, tolls have turned this symbol of unity into a line of division. The road built to defend against a foreign threat is now a front line in an economic conflict between old friends. The spirit of 1942 feels distant. New toll booths stand in stark contrast to signs celebrating the highway's cooperative origins. A road meant to unite is now pushing two nations apart. Canada's trade disputes with the US have usually meant tit-for-tat tariffs, never anything like this. For decades, both countries have relied on a delicate balance, responding to each other's moves with measured, predictable actions. But this time, the playbook was thrown out the window. British Columbia's tolls were just the start. The province moved quickly, catching many by surprise and signaling that this was not business as usual. Premier Eby ordered a sweeping ban on American goods and services for provincial agencies. This was a bold, unprecedented step, and it sent shockwaves through both sides of the border. Liquor stores pulled products from Republican-led states, including Alaska. Shelves that once displayed American whiskey and bourbon now stood empty, a visible sign of the deepening rift. This was no longer a diplomatic dance, it was economic warfare. The headlines screamed trade war, and the mood in government offices grew tense. BC was targeting a specific American vulnerability, Alaska's dependence on the highway. The message was clear. The province knew exactly where to apply pressure. The strategy was asymmetric, designed to inflict maximum pain with minimal effort. It was a calculated move, crafted to disrupt without overextending. After months of escalating U.S. tariffs, Canadian patience had run out. The public mood shifted from frustration to determination. A new sense of defiance took hold. Canada would stand up for itself. Rallies and demonstrations erupted, with citizens demanding action. British Columbia's actions signaled a new era, no more quiet disagreement. The province was now leading the charge, setting an example for the rest of the country. The province was willing to play hardball, and the rest of Canada was watching. Across the nation, people debated what would come next. The message to Washington was unmistakable. Canada would no longer be pushed around or ignored. Canada was done playing by the old rules. A new chapter in the relationship had begun, and the world was watching to see what would happen next. The political standoff isn't just a distant headline. It has real, immediate consequences for ordinary people, especially those living in Alaska, where the stakes are higher than most Americans realize. For 730,000 Alaskans, the Alaska Highway is more than a road. It's a vital artery, a lifeline that brings in food, medicine, fuel, and other essential supplies that simply can't be sourced locally. When that supply chain is disrupted by tolls and border delays, the result is immediate. Empty shelves, higher prices, and a growing sense of anxiety in communities already facing harsh conditions. Truckers, the backbone of this supply chain, are forced into impossible choices. Either pay exorbitant new fees or abandon the route altogether, leaving businesses and families stranded and isolated. Canadian communities along the highway, which depend on the steady flow of U.S. traffic, are also feeling the pinch as business dries up and local economies falter. The policy meant to punish the U.S. is backfiring, hurting Canadian shop owners, workers and families who rely on cross-border commerce for their livelihoods. In a trade war, there are no clean shots. Everyone from shoppers to truckers to small business owners feels the pain and uncertainty. Families in Anchorage and beyond are now forced to make tough choices about what groceries they can afford, stretching every dollar as far as it will go. Truckers in Washington state, who once saw the Alaska route as a steady job, now fear for their livelihoods as uncertainty grows with every passing day. Small businesses in Yukon, already operating on thin margins, watch their livelihoods evaporate as customers disappear and bills pile up. High-level politics, once a distant concern, have become a daily source of anxiety and hardship for people on both sides of the border, affecting every aspect of life. As neighbors turn into adversaries and communities grow more divided, daily life becomes more uncertain, and the true cost of political conflict is felt in every home and on every street. At the heart of the conflict are two leaders, Mark Carney, Canada's calm strategist, and Donald Trump, America's fiery populist. Carney projects resolve, supporting provincial actions and uniting premiers behind a common cause. He's betting that sustained economic pain will force the US to compromise while keeping the door open for diplomacy. Trump, meanwhile, responds with indignation and threats, doubling tariffs and framing Canada as an ungrateful neighbor. He halted trade talks over Canada's digital tax, showing a willingness to escalate at any provocation. Trump's unpredictability keeps everyone off balance, while Alaska's leaders plead for relief. The standoff is now a battle of wills, with millions caught in the crossfire. The outcome will shape the economic future of both nations. The stakes have never been higher. British Columbia's move sparked a wave of solidarity across Canada. Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the US, threatening a full cut-off if tariffs weren't lifted. The Yukon banned American liquor and barred US firms from government contracts. Even symbolic gestures, like calls to ban Donald Trump Jr. from hunting, showed the depth of frustration. Canada's provinces, regardless of politics, united in resistance. The US now faced a multi-pronged challenge, not just Ottawa. Each province leveraged its strengths, creating a formidable national front. Prime Minister Carney channeled this unity into a coherent strategy, showing Washington that Canada would not back down. The trade war's effects are everywhere, at gas stations, grocery stores and factories. In the US, states reliant on Canadian trade face higher utility bills and food prices. Alaska's supply chain disruptions mean fresh food costs are soaring. The auto industry, built on cross-border supply chains, faces slowdowns and layoffs. Canadian tariffs on U.S. goods are raising prices for consumers, while American exporters lose access to a key market. The cycle of retaliation is driving up costs and fueling economic anxiety. Jobs are at risk and entire communities feel the strain. The intertwined economies are now sources of mutual pain. In this fight, there are no winners, only losses for ordinary citizens. The immediate trigger for the latest breakdown wasn't trucks or timber. It was Canada's digital services tax. The proposed 3% tax on tech giants like Google and Amazon infuriated the Trump administration. The US saw it as a direct attack on American companies and threatened retaliation. The dispute over digital taxes scuttled trade talks and poured fuel on the fire. The irony? A 21st century digital dispute has led to a 20th century style trade war. The conflict now spans goods, services and data, entangling both economies even further. What began as a debate over tax fairness has become a damaging economic showdown. The U.S. Canada relationship stands at a crossroads. The Alaska highway tolls and retaliatory measures are symptoms of a deep rift. The question: de-escalate and negotiate, or spiral into lasting hostility? Internal pressure from citizens and industries could force leaders to compromise. A settlement is possible but seems distant as tensions rise. The alternative is a hardened border, factory closures, and lasting economic scars. Decades of trust and goodwill are at risk. The choices made now will determine if the world's longest undefended border remains a symbol of friendship or a monument to a lost partnership. The world is watching. The next move will define the future for both nations.